TITUBA. TITUBA was the first woman to be accused of practicing witchcraft during the 1692 Salem witch trials. She was enslaved and owned by Samuel Parris, Danvers, Massachusetts. Though her origins are debated, research has suggested that she was a South American native and sailed from Barbados to New England with Samuel Parris. Little is known regarding TITUBA's life prior to her enslavement. She became a pivotal figure in the witch trials when she confessed to witchcraft, by also making claims that both Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne participated in the same said witchcraft. She was imprisoned and later released by Samuel Conklin. Little to nothing is known about TITUBA's life following her subsequent release. Early life accusations against her. TITUBA's husband was John Indian, an indigenous man whose origins are unknown, but he may have been he may have been from Central and South America. TITUBA may have been originally been from Barbados. The often unreliable records of the enslaved person's origins makes this information difficult to verify. There are historians such as Samuel Drake who suggest that TITUBA was an African. Her husband went on to become one of the accusers in the witch trials. They appear documented together in Samuel Parris's church record book. TITUBA was the first person to be accused by Elizabeth Parris and Abigail Williams of witchcraft. It has been theorized that TITUBA told the girls tales of voodoo and witchcraft prior to the accusations. She was also the first to confess to witchcraft in Salem Village in March 1692. So this is like before the making of the United States of 1692. Right. So initially denying her involvement in witchcraft. Also, before I forget, I'll be giving away some free reading material. So stay tuned for that. I'll put the link for it in the chat so you guys can be able to get that and learn a little bit more about this. TITUBA later confessed to making a witch cake due to being beaten by Samuel Parris with the intentions of getting a confession. This witch cake seems to be a cake that was made with urine from the children. And it was used to give to a dog, if I'm not mistaken. The people believed in like these witches could shapeshift or whatever you would call it and turn into things like animals. So I guess like maybe the household dog was fed this cake and whatever happened, we're going to learn about it because I just skimmed through this stuff. So I'm going to be doing a lot more reading than I did myself before I do this video. So let me just keep going here. Making a witch cake due to being beaten by Samuel Parris with the intention of getting a confession. When questioned later, she added that she knew about the occult techniques from her mistress in Barbados, who taught her how to ward herself from evil powers and how to reveal the cause of witchcraft. Since such knowledge was not meant to harm, TITUBA again asserted to Parris she was not a witch, but admitted she had participated in an occult ritual when she made the witch cake in an attempt to help Elizabeth Parris. TITUBA, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne were sent to jail in Boston to await trial and punishment on March 7th, 1692. Despite these confessions, there is no proof that she did things to which she confessed. Other women and men from surrounding villages were accused of witchcraft and arrested in Salem witchcraft trials. Not only did TITUBA accuse others of her confession, but she talked about black dogs, hogs, yellow bird, red and black rats, cats, a fox, and a wolf. TITUBA talked about riding sticks to different places. She confessed that Sarah Osborne possessed a creature with the head of a woman 2 legs, and wings. Since that sounds like Askeladd or something. Since it mixed various perspectives on witchcraft, Tituba's confession confused listeners, and its similarities to certain stock tropes of demonology caused some Salem village residents to believe that Satan was among them. After the trials, this is very clever what this lady did. After the trials, Tituba remained in jail because Samuel Parris refused to pay her jail fees. In April 1693, wow, so she was in there for a year. Tituba was sold to an unknown person for the price of her jail fees. In an interview with Robert Califf for his collection of papers on the trials, titled More Wonders of the Invisible World, being an account of the trials of several witches lately executed in New England, Tituba confirmed that Parris had beaten a confession out of her and then coached her in what to say and how to say it when first questioned. I'm going to go to my other source. See what I got. Oh shit, this is crazy right here. Okay. Okay. All right, here we go. Here we go. This is good. Down here with me? Nope. All right. Source here. All right. Born in Old Saybrook, Connecticut in 1908, Ann Petrie grew up in one of the small towns only two black families. families. She moved to the predominantly poor black community in Harlem. This is about the life. She wrote about Tuba and Salem Village. Is one of the authors many novels that focus on the lives of black people and racial tensions of American society. Although it chronicles in 17th century Salem witch trials, the novel concerns issues that reappear in 20th century America. Indentured servants. Here we go. A number of characters in Tituba of Salem Village, such as Pern and Mercy Lewis, are indentured servants. In the late 17th century, indentured servants made up one of the largest elements of New England society. They were obligated to work for a master for a fixed number of years and low served for between 2 and 7 years. The majority of the region's indentured servants had traveled from England voluntarily, selling their labor in return for passage to America. Others became servants against their will. And voluntary servants included a few groups of convicts shipped by the English government to be sold into servitude, poor white children, orphans, and paupers from London's slums. Some had been kidnapped by unscrupulous merchants. Indentured servants were usually white and held their positions only temporarily. This situation was similar to that of slaves in some way. However, indentured servants, like slaves, received food and shelter for the length of their servitude. Both classes owed complete obedience to their master, who sometimes indulged his authority to order brutal beatings for both white servants and slaves. Speaking of getting the food and shelter, I'm going to do a video after this, probably tomorrow. I'm going to go through the dietary habits and stuff of the slaves in America, and whether or not were they really, because a lot of Afrocentric groups and stuff speak about slaves being basically almost starved, and they only got the worst of the food and stuff like that. But there's a lot of sources saying that slaves were actually very are well fed, and that sometimes the slaves were being fed uh, just as much, if not better, than their captors in certain periods of time, especially during that wartime. Uh, Finally, both were seen stereotyped as lazy, unruly, dishonest, and inferior people. Like slaves, indentured service were considered to be among the lowest elements of Puritan society. Slavery in colonial America. 20 blacks are known to have been sold to the settlers of Virginia. Whether they were indentured servants or slaves remains uncertain. Many Puritans believed that blacks were more closely related to animals than to human beings. Some argued about whether they even had souls to save. In addition, Puritans closely associated black, the color of the slave's skin, with evil. They often referred to Satan as the black man. The Puritans associated white, on the other hand, with goodness and virtue. These prejudicial attitudes helped the Puritans rationalize their enslavement. Witchcraft. As in other areas of the world at the time, people in Massachusetts believed in the ability of Satan, the major spirit of evil, to assert his power on earth. One way he was thought to do this was through human agents called witches, who allegedly caused a great deal of mischief in the world. Witches promised to honor, worship, and obey Satan by putting a mark or signature in his book. In return for her service, the witch received various supernatural powers. According to those who believe in witchcraft, the witch's main instrument in performing crimes was her own specter or spirit. She could send her invisible specter anywhere to do harm while her physical body remained far from the scene of the crime. Only the victim could see the specter of the attacking witch. In addition, Puritans charged that a witch was often aided by one or more familiars. Familiars were low-ranking evil spirits given to witches by Satan. They typically appeared in the shape of a small animal, such as a cat or a bird. The familiar was the witch's constant companion. That's why we see, like, Halloween, you see the witch is always with a cat. So familiar. So Puritans of Massachusetts believed that witches tormented others by squeezing and pinching articles of their victims' clothing, or by sticking pins into dolls or puppets made to resemble their victims. According to the Puritans, some of the physical symptoms that resulted from these devilish activities include convulsive fits, temporary loss of hearing, speech and sight, loss of memory and appetite, choking sensations, and terrifying hallucinations. Anyone who had the power to hurt others in such frightening supernatural ways was considered to be a major enemy of society. Consequently, the punishment for practicing witchcraft was very severe. If a person was convicted of being a witch, the judges often sentenced the person to death. Confession, the accused person's admission that he or she was a witch, sometimes resulted in a reprieve from execution. In Salem, a witch who confessed would escape the death penalty. TITUBA received such a reprieve in TITUBA's Salem village. The real life TITUBA. Little is known about the historical TITUBA, the woman who did in fact live in Salem during the witch trials of the late 17th century. It has been determined that she had originally lived in Barbados, in the island of the, and in return, those two people said they would hurt her. And let's see. Nope, he said no. Got one more. One head watch. All right. Okay. In Petrie's novel, TITUBA observes that the bewitched girls mostly have their fits in public. When they have an audience, their fits and accusations garner them more attention than they ever had before. The girls are even excused from doing any chores. Over the course of the novel, such observations apply a particular interpretation of the whole affair. They suggest that the girls were motivated by self-interest to pretend to be bewitched. Others suggest that the girls' behavior can be traced back to the combined effect of Cotton Mather's 1689 book on witchcraft and local talk about witches. Proponents of this theory contend that the two factors produce such an intense fear of being possessed by the devil that the girls' behavior was affected. TITUBA, a Salem village, opens in Barbados, an island in West Indies in the late 17th century. Slave TITUBA and her husband, John, are sold to the Massachusetts minister named Samuel Paris. Within a day of discovering they had been sold, the couple must sail from their home to many years to Massachusetts. On board the ship, they meet their new master's sickly wife, as well as the minister's daughter, Betsy, and niece, Abigail. TITUBA also meets Kern, a young stowaway, who is later caught and sold as an indentured servant to a resident of Salem Village, Massachusetts. The Reverend's family remains in Boston for the winter while he seeks employment. Living next door to the family is a weaver named Samuel Coughlin, who teaches TITUBA the art of spinning thread. Finally, Reverend Paris is offered a job as minister of Salem Village, where the family soon moves. During one winter in Salem Village, TITUBA tells some of the village girls vivid stories about Barbados. Oh, I'm showing the screen. Screen. That. That. All right. Village girls, vivid stories about Barbados. At one of these gatherings, Betsy Paris falls onto a trance-like state from staring at a bowl of water. After this episode, Abigail and the other village girls try to induce this state in her again. They also become interested in fortune telling after TITUBA tells their fortunes with tarot cards brought to the Reverend's house by Mercy Lewis, the indentured servant of the Putnam family. So they're scrying and using tarot cards. Wow. A few days later, a village vagrant named Sarah Good and her daughter Dorcas arrived at the Reverend's house and begged for food upon the departure. This is pretty deep because it seems like when TITUBA was on trial, she might have threw those people up in there to save her own ass, and knowing that these people are such of a lowly state that no one would really challenge the accusation, because like they're vagrants. Just like how we see people today like to do things like that. They might commit a crime or something like that, and then if there's a homeless person or a drug addict or a prostitute or something like that, they'll try to put the blame on them to, you know what I mean, get out of the trouble. Dorcas accidentally leaves behind a doll that she calls Patience Mullenhouse, the name of one of the other village children. Abigail throws the doll into the fire, where it seems to with eerie expressions of almost human anguish. Later, Abigail and her companions learn that the Mullenhouse girl was recently burned to death. The coincidence greatly disturbs everyone. Abigail and Betsy begin having strange fits. The girls are examined by a doctor who declared that they must be bewitched. Before long, 4 of the other village girls join Betsy and Abigail in their strange behavior. The public further develops to find out who is tormenting the girls. A woman named Mary Sibley prepares a witch cake at Reverend Paris's house, right? The purpose of the cake is to attract the witches to the house and reveal their identity. TITUBA, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osmond all appear at the house and are accused of being witches. So as you see here, this other woman prepares a witch cake, right? But They said, I read in another source that, I'll get to that other source. Reverend Paris intimidates and beats TITUBA into confessing that she is a witch. TITUBA, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne are arrested and put on trial. The three publicly deny being witches. Many witnesses come forward, however, to claim that the women are indeed witches who did the harm. Meanwhile, the bewitched girls continue to have fits that instantly disappear when the girls are touched by the alleged witches. This phenomenon helps convince people of the women's guilt, and the judges sentenced TITUBA, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne to a Boston jail. As the weeks pass, more and more accused witches from Salem village crowd into their jails. Eventually, some of the prisoners, including Sarah Good, are put to death. The furor gradually subsides and the trials come to an end. Governor William Phillips pardons all the prisoners, but they are not allowed to leave prison until the money spent for their upkeep on necessities such as food and blankets have been repaid. Reverend Paris refused to pay TITUBA's fees. After no money of her own, she therefore remains in prison longer than any of the other accused of practicing witchcraft. Eventually, she is brought to Samuel Conklin, the weaver who had taught her to spin thread when she had lived in Boston. TITUBA Salem Witch describes life in the 17th century through the eye of a female black slave. While the story focuses on Salem witch trials, it also provides a sense of what it's like to be a slave in those times. Many of TITUBA's experiences illustrate the hardships of slavery. When she and her husband are sold by their mistress in Barbados to a Boston minister, they are forced to leave within a day. This short period of time gives them a little more opportunity to prepare for their journey. Moreover, there are no desire to leave their warm island for an uninviting home in the cold, harsh climate of New England, but they are powerless to stop the move. The gravest example of abuse of slavery occurs toward the end of the novel. Reverend Paris has learned that the accusations leveled against TITUBA, angry that she has brought this humiliation to his house, and concerned about his reputation and possibility that he might be implicated as some kind of associate of witches, Paris demands a full confession from TITUBA. She refuses until the Reverend begins beating her with great force. The beating, which marks the first time she has been hit over the course of the story, affects her very deeply. She finds it both painful and humiliating, an unspeakable hurt to the spirit, to the soul. Other parts of the novel, however, suggest that relations between blacks and whites were not always so grim and hostile. TITUBA seems to have a close relationship with the young Betsy Paris. Betsy turns to TITUBA for comfort on many occasions, such as times when the girl is frightened about her sickly mother's bad health. Sometimes she thrusts her small, cold hand onto TITUBA's hand, whispering, Don't let her die, TITUBA. Don't let her die." TITUBA also enjoys a positive relationship with Samuel Conklin, the Boston weaver who introduces her to spinning. He visits TITUBA in the Boston jail at least once a week, bringing her extra bread and cheese. Even Mary Sibley, the person who first suggests making the witch cake, confesses to TITUBA that if she had known the way the witch cake would turn out, I would have cut off my right hand rather than make it. None of these relationships changes the fact that TITUBA is a black slave, obligated to obey the orders of the white master. TITUBA's experiences with these people, however, indicate that not all relationships between blacks and whites in the days of slavery were hostile. They were whites who respected black slaves like TITUBA and treated them like human beings. TITUBA, the Salem Village, is based on accounts of the 1962 witch trials in Salem, Massachusetts. The main characters are people who actually participated in the trials, but there are scant information on their lives and personalities. Petrie's novel explains on the little direct evidence that exists. For example, Petrie notes that the real TITUBA insisted that she loved her owner's daughter. The novelist subsequently portrays the relationship between the two characters as a close one. The novel ends with a postscript that contains facts about the trials and how they ended. It claims that Boston weaver Frank Conklin purchased TITUBA but historical records suggest that her purchaser, while not known for certain, may have been a slave dealer. All right. 1962, the belief that witches pose a serious threat to the well-being of New England society led by the Salem witch trials. In 1950 and 60s, communists, rather than witches, were seen as dangerous conspirators against America. Across the country, all kinds of institutions, state and local government, schools, and university labor unions tried to purge themselves of the real or imagined communists. And as we see here today, we have things just like that too. I'm gonna get to my next source here. This is a good one, though. So here, we'll get to the next one. All right, we're gonna talk a little bit about this next lady here, Mary Black. All right. Let me get to this examination and I'll read a little bit about her. I should read her thing first. Like that, listen. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna give you guys tonight. Y'all hold tight. I'm gonna hit y'all up with a little ebook. Same one I got here. 1 second. Simulation. Get together here. Listen. All right. Let's get this here. Mary Black. Oh shit, got 2 people up in here. Thanks y'all for stopping by. Mary Black. All right. Mary Black, Salem witch trials. Mary Black was a slave of African descent in the household of Nathaniel Putnam of the Putnam family, who was accused of witchcraft during the Salem witch trials. Nathaniel's nephew, Thomas Putnam, one of the primary accusers, through Nathaniel himself, was skeptical and even defended Rebecca Nurse. Mary was arrested, indicted, and imprisoned, but did not go to trial and was released by proclamation in January 21st, 1693. She returned to Nathaniel's household after she was released, another indication of Nathaniel's view of the charges against her. Along with TITUBA and Candy, Mary was one of the 3 slaves accused during the hysteria. All of them survived. Arrest John Hathorne and Jonathan Corwin ordered Mary Black, along with Sarah Wiles, Sarah and Edward Bishop, William and Deliverance Hobbs, Nehemiah Abbott, Mary Itzy, and Mary English to be arrested on April 21st, 1692 on high suspicion of witchcraft performed by Ann Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, and Mary Walcott, and others due to a complaint by Thomas Putnam and John Buxton. Her examination, which was recorded by Samuel Paris, was notable for the fact that she was asked to repin her neckcloth, which seemingly caused the afflicted girls, including Mary Wolcott, Abigail Williams, and Mercy Lewis, to be pricked to the point of drawing blood, according to transcript. Mary maintained her innocence. Mary was put on trial in January 1693, and no one appeared against her. She was released. What I find very interesting too is that these people were actually given trials. There's a lot of stories we see, like especially the slavery time and stuff like that. They'll say, "Hey, they did it," and you know what I mean. They'd be put to death or severely beaten and stuff like that. But from the way I'm reading this, it seems like these people were kind of treated, even though they were servants and had to obey orders and they couldn't leave, and they were slaves, but they were given a honest, I don't know if I can say honest with trials of how they went about everything or how they even got in there in the first place. But it seems like they were treated like the regular citizens of the city in certain cases. That they weren't treated like, you know what I mean, like a dog or something like that. Bit a girl, we're just gonna kill that. Like, you know what I'm saying? There was actually like people didn't want to false accuse the people. I guess that's what I want to say. Right? Okay. In the book Satan and Salem, Benjamin Ray puts forth the likely possibility that Nathaniel Putnam was simply too well respected for anyone to accuse his servant of wrongdoing. He did not accuse her himself. He paid her jailing fees and took her back to the household. He further theorized that her steadfast testimony as to her innocence might have been due to Putnam's coaching. Mary's accusers may have been retaliating for Nathaniel having spoken out in defense of Rebecca Nurse. Little else could be gained by accusing a slave, as they did not own property. Okay. All right, we learned something. All right, let's get to some more stuff here. Yeah, let me just get the candy now. Candy. See that you know that's what's up. All right. All right. Now this is the second slave that was accused of witchcraft. Candy was an Afro-Barbadian slave under the ownership of Marlborough Hawks of Salem Town, who was accused of witchcraft during the Salem witch trials. On July 1st, 1692, John Putnam Jr. and Thomas Putnam accused both Hawks and Candy of terminating Ann Putnam Jr., Mary Wolcott, and Mary Warren. Upon interrogation, she admitted to being a witch, but turned on her owner, claiming that Hawks had turned her into a witch and forced her to sign the devil's book. Despite this admission, she was found not guilty and was released. There are no record of Margaret Hawks having been arrested. Right. So she turned on the owner and said that the owner turned her into a witch. Wow. There's no record of Margaret Hawks having been arrested, unlike many others accused married women who were referred to as good wife. Margaret was addressed with the horrific Mrs., which indicates she was of higher social class. When she was asked how she and her owner tormented the girls, she volunteered to demonstrate the procedure. She returned with some puppet or whatever, like I guess you would call like a voodoo doll, just to make it simple and more clear. When they were manipulated by pinching, heat, and water, the afflicted girls responded in kind. Her examination records, her testimony in broken English, which indicates she was probably newly exposed to the English language. She was one of the 3 slaves, along with TITUBA and Mary Black, to be accused during the hysteria. All right? All right, now you get some good stuff here. All right. What this was all about. Open that one up. I didn't read it though. That's the Connecticut witchcraft stuff. Check that out later. Here's I guess like the proclamation declare Mary Black. Okay, that what this is. Check this out. There you go. Examination of Mary Black. The examination of Mary Black, a Negro at a court held at Salem Village by the magistrates of Salem, Mary. You are accused of sundry acts of witchcraft. Tell me, be you a witch? Silence. How long have you been a witch? I cannot tell. Why do you hurt these folks? I hurt nobody. Who doth? I do not know. Benja Putman, her master saith, a man sat down upon the farm with her about 12 months ago. What did that man say to you? He said nothing. Does this Negro hurt you? Several of them said yes. Why do you hurt them? I did not hurt them. Do you prick sticks? No, I pinned my neckcloth. Well, take out a pin and pin it again. She did so, and several of the afflicted cried out. They were pricked. Mary Wolcott was pricked in the arm till the blood came. Abigail Williams was pricked in the stomach, and Mercy Lewis was pricked in the foot. Mr. Samuel Paris being desired to take in writing the examination of Mary Black, the Negro woman delivered it as foresaid, and upon hearing the same and seeing what we did then see together, that the charge of the afflicted persons when present, we committed Mary Black, per us, John Hawthorne and Jonathan Corman. Examination Mary Black, 22 April 1692, cleared by a proclamation. January 1692, Mr. Nathaniel Putnam at Salem Village is his Negro. Yeah, this Negro. Okay. All right. Now, way almost done here. Get that out of here. That's a good one. This one up. Maybe this one. This is a little bit more here. These out, put that up. That. I'll probably could just read this one. I'm gonna give y'all 2 ebooks tonight. 2 PDFs. I believe there's a series. I don't really watch TV at all, but there's a show. Oh, this was years ago. I thought it was recent. This was years ago. It's called Salem. It says Salem 203 from within. And I guess it hits on that topic. I can't play it because they'll probably flag me from TV show. All right. So this here. All right, this goes in a little bit more with Candy, but I think this one might cover a lot more of that there. Yeah, I believe this one is better. It's more into Candy's thing here. talks about all three of them, actually. All right, we can read a little bit of this. Let's change this up. Thanks for the 2 people in the room still hanging in there with me. Appreciate that. All right. I'm going to give y'all this one too. I'll put this in the chat now. Slide. History 29, Professor Mary Beth Norton, number 28, 2011. The exploration of accused slaves during the get y'all a little giveaway here. I got another one that's really good. I might read just a little bit out of it and just give it to you guys. Put this in the chat here for y'all. But what's cool, it's been something up with my YouTube. Like, it doesn't show the chat like all the time. Like, after I end the stream and like go watch it again, sometimes the chat doesn't show up. So if you don't, I'm going to put it in here. So YouTube people and stuff are going to look out and actually get it. I might put it in the comments after. Ready. Let's go. All right. How the hell did that happen? This is when that shit continues. That's the bullshit. Excuse me. That is. I've never seen that ever. It continued only put one comment in there, but it made 2 out of it. So there it is. That's the whole thing. So you guys can get it. All right. All right. The way that slaves are identified in their daily lives in Essex County was reflected in the way they were perceived in courts as accused witches. Slaves commonly lived a life in the background due to the nature of their duties and expected behavior. Slaves were supposed to be invisible, but when they were identified, it was by their race, evidenced by the way they were named. However, slaves were not only isolated from society by their race, they were also different in the way they spoke, their lack of family, and their connections to foreign religions. While in court, slaves also used the power they had as accused witches to, just like I was saying earlier. Just like I was saying earlier. Hey, I'm sharp. I'm sharp. In court, slaves also used the power they had as accused witches to rebel against their owners. These aspects of how they were dissimilar can be seen in court with 3 slaves, Mary Black, TITUBA, and Candy, and how their differences led to how they were treated in court. Because slaves were Black or Indian and had no rights, they were restricted in ways that they could rebel against their masters. For them, the trials were an avenue through which they could adequately vent their anger. This is evidenced by the case of Candy, a slave originally from Barbados residing in Salem town with her owners, Mistress Hawks. When questioned, Candy revealed to the courts that it was her white mistress, Mrs. Margaret Hawks, who had taught her witchcraft. After being asked if her mistress made her into a witch, Candy replied, yes. In this country, mistress give Candy witch. They talking like how the slave would talk, like the broken English and stuff. But wait. Where was she from? I erased the thing. But wasn't she from Barbados? The mistress, the slave owner was from Barbados. And if you guys check out any of my Palo Mayombe, I think it's like Palo Mayombe and African and Cuban explorer in the 16th century, I think the name of it is. I go in there and talk about how like the religions and stuff, that how the indigenous Indians and the slaves, how they created Palo Mayombe by fusing their cultures and religions and stuff together, and how even the Spanish, after a time, they even started to accept or not, probably not accept, but fuse or synchronize some of their religions with theirs. Know what I'm saying? So this mistress might actually have known those black arts from the slaves and the indigenous of that land where she was living in Barbados. If I'm correct, she was from Barbados. She lived in Barbados too. I read it earlier, but I forgot. Right? When questioned, Candy revealed to the courts that it was her white mistress. Wait, too far up. There we go. Candy replied, "Yes. In this country, mistress give Candy witch." Furthermore, as if to assure the arrest of her mistress, Candy went on to detail how Hawks made her into a witch by bringing up the devil's book, a book that people signed when they made a pact with the devil. In her description, Candy stated, "Mistress, bring book and pen and ink. Make Candy write in it." Further drawing comparison between her mistress and the devil. Though the records of the examination are no longer extant, this accusation brought Margaret Hawks to her examination. Though she would be later released from prison, the accused slaves found in the courts a reprieve from the invisibility they constantly endured, even more than the afflicted girls. While they were testifying, the slaves could say things and finally be heard. The times when the slaves couldn't say shit, like most of the people, but like I said, like that's kind of strange how they actually would give the witch a trial to find out whether it was her fault or not. And it seems like well, I guess if the slave is affecting other people outside of the family, you know what I'm saying? But I think one case with TITUBA, it was the family that accused her, I think, if I remember right? So that's still kind of strange that they're on trial, like they've been going to court. It seemed like they would just kill them or just accuse them, and it's like we said that's what you did, and that'd be the end of it, right? But this is crazy. TITUBA was another example of how slaves could rebel through the court. TITUBA was Samuel Parris' slave. TITUBA was Samuel Parris' slave. It was one of the first witches accused during the trial. During her examination, TITUBA, how black people always try to be almost the first shit when some crazy shit go down, like the Revolutionary War, a black person was the first person to get killed. Now you got the damn slaves and shit, one of the first people in the witch trials. Ain't this some shit, right? During her examination, TITUBA hinted at 5 witches when she said there was 5 of them with the band. That's right, because she accused the vagrants, the people that was going around asking, begging and asking for food. So she put it on their asses and shit. Like, I'm gonna get up out of this shit. Damn. However, TITUBA then went on to accuse only 2 people, Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne, in omitting a couple of names. TITUBA maintained some control over the court. From then on, people would wonder exactly what information TITUBA had decided to keep to herself, and whom among them was an undiscovered witch. For oh snap! So she ain't tell everything. So people gonna give her some kind of like favor because like she know all the whole thing and she ain't letting it all out, but like they know she know more. So they probably ain't gonna do nothing that severe to her because like she know more. Like, know what I mean? They need to get that out of her. TITUBA was stated that 9 people in Salem had made a pact with Satan. So she refused to name exactly who, because TITUBA said there were 9 people who had signed the pact, but named none. She further motivated the trials in Salem's hunt for the remaining sinners. So damn, she might have could have just hated everybody ass and shit. Like, we need to kill all these white people. Well, I'll be damned. All right. So, in other effort to rebel against white authority, TITUBA described the devil as a tall, white-haired man from Boston, while effectively arousing fears that Samuel Parris or any white man of the village might have had, since the description applied to him. Robert Caleb, though he was a critic of the trials and therefore not entirely reliable, revealed that TITUBA was forced to testify by being beaten by Parris, which further demonstrates TITUBA's motivation during her confession. This revelation also further complicated the relationships between master and slave. As for mentioned in the 17th century, there existed very few ways for a slave to rebel against the master. However, the witchcraft trials provided a place for the minority to express their grievances in ways that could not anywhere else. So, wow, that's deep. So, the slaves will get, well, damn, wow. Y'all see this, yo? This is crazy. Let's see if anybody else up in here. Yo, y'all see this? Yo, this is bugged out. Wow. So now they finally like, yo, I'm gonna stick it through. This dude want to beat me and all types of stuff. So now the slaves can be like, yo, my master's a witch. They just be like, yo, my master's a witch. Yo, look, he's a witch. He taught me to be like this. Damn. So it's like playing divide and conquer. Holy crap. Yo, this is crazy. The elementary use of English, okay. The elementary use of English further distanced the slaves from the norm of Puritan society, and reminded anyone in court of their different ancestry affecting Candy in particular. When asked if she was a witch, Candy replied, "Candy no witch in her country. Candy's mother no witch. Candy no witch. Barbados." So saying like they don't know English, they speaking in like they broken like English. Throughout her testimony, Candy barely used any prepositions, verbs, or any articles, making clear to the jury her standing in society and lack of education. In stark contrast to Candy, and with that too, would still help the people. Cause like, you know what I'm saying? So they don't think she's crafty enough to make up something, like, you know what I mean? That she's just like dumb. Like they looking at her like an animal, basically. Like she dumb. So she like retarded. So it's just like if say they had some, let me just like God forbid this happen, but like it happens. But say like some kid was abused that had like a mental illness or something like that, or something, and they can't speak correctly, right? But the examiner or the person that the detectives that's trying to see whether that person was abused or not, and they just gonna say, so and so touch me, hurt, like or something like that. And the people can be like, oh snap, like, you know what I mean? That person did it. And it's not gonna seem made up. It's not gonna seem like somebody pushed them to say that because of their so-called appearance of being ignorant or just like unlearned, like, you know what I'm saying? Yo, that's crazy. Holy shit. Oh, God. Throughout her testimony, Carey barely used any preposition, verbs, or any articles, making clear to the jury her standing in society and lack of education. In stark contrast to Candy, TITUBA seemed to use clear dictation. For example, when asked if she saw the devil, she answered, "The devil came to me and bid me serve him." Right? Mary Black had also adapted a more proper use of English language. When asked if she hurt the children, she replied, "I did not hurt them." See, like she knew English a little bit more. But old Candy is the old snap. One possible explanation of Candy's weaker grasp of English was because of her possible recent enslavement and departure from Africa. Oh, okay. Mary Black's master was Nathaniel Putnam, while Tuba's master was Samuel Parrish. Effectively, both Mary Black and TITUBA were fully immersed in English language, while Candy remained with her mistress, who was from Barbados. So, see, yeah, so her mistress was from Barbados. Her owner was from Barbados. Though no court records indicate the exact date of Mary Black's arrival, it can be inferred that TITUBA had been in America for the longest since he presumably came over with Samuel Parrish from Barbados around 1680. Because of her use of language, Candy persistently reminded anyone listening of the fact that she was a foreigner. And they were not accustomed to the same practices and laws as others. As well as their skin color and their use of language, the way the slaves were addressed reminded others of their social status. In the court documents, TITUBA was never called anything other than an Indian. In every account of TITUBA, the fact that she was an Indian is often repeated. For instance, John Hale referred to her as the Indian woman named TITUBA, as did Robert Califf. Deodat Lawson referred to her as Mr. Paris Indian woman. Never was TITUBA identity separate from her race. The same can be said for Mary Black. Her examination was introduced by her name. Then in parentheses, it said a Negro. Candy's case also proves similar. In both indictments against Candy, it is specified that she is a Negro woman. So basically, they looking at them like they animals, basically. Like, shit. Well, I said before, like, you know what I mean? It seemed like they were kind of treated kind of civil, sort of, like, you know what I mean? But they still, like, everybody knew their class, like what they were. And they weren't like called Mr. or Mrs. or nothing, right? They were called by their name, the Negro, Candy the Negro. Like you got Bob the dog, like, you know what I'm saying, Rusty the dog. Not even giving it male or female, like, or whatever. That's crazy. The identities of the slave inside and outside of the court were tied to their slave status in the village. The racial identification served as a way to objectify the slaves, so that throughout the court proceedings, they were depicted solely in terms of their race. Furthermore, it can be inferred that perhaps their racial identities were conflated to the point of serving as their names. Mary Black's race was already stated in her name, as was TITUBA when she was called TITUBA Indian, and Candy was some called Candy Negro. It was common practice for slaves to not be given surnames, and these three were examples. This racist practice, however, for these slaves, naming reinforced their otherness in the eyes of those listening in court. Not only did the slaves rebel against their masters, they rebelled against social norms by being familiar with foreign religions. Something that was demonstrated in their use of puppets. Familiar with foreign religions, demonstrated in use of puppets. During her trial, Candy brought out her puppet and Mrs. Hawks and the Negro stood by the puppets or rags and pinched them, and then they were affected. Further on, the record states that when the poppets were set on fire, the afflicted girl started feeling burning sensations. Because Candy had not been in the mainland colonies for very long, her use of the poppets most likely recall her previous African culture. During her own examination, Mary Black was asked to pin her neck cloth, and upon doing it, she did so, and several of the afflicted cried out as they were pricked. Mary Wolcott was pricked in the arm till the blood came. The use of the poppets or neck cloths by the slaves further enforced stereotypes held by the slaves in foreign culture, despite their prevalence among white witches as well. Lastly, through TITUBA did not bring poppets out during her trial. She was associated with the other forms of black magic, such as crafting a witch cake to cure others of witchcraft. Though others were familiar with witch cakes because TITUBA was foreign, it reminded people of this fact. TITUBA's familiarity with black magic calls into focus the influence of foreign Caribbean culture prior to her arrival in these Americas. Because like even in Native Americans, the Tainos, the Arawaks, what you call them, they practice necromancy. You know what I'm saying? Like that's where that Nganga and the Palamambi originated. They used to take their ancestors' bones and put them in gourds. And like, you know what I mean? They'll take their finger bones or whatever, and like they'll put it in the gourd and hang it up on the porch or like, you know what I mean, in the corner of the house. And they would give it offerings and do divination and ask it questions and stuff like that. Just like that if the person was alive. Because of the use of poppets and Mary Black and Candy, something reminiscent of certain Caribbean religions, this reminded the court and judges of their innate otherness. Though other accused witches used poppets because the slaves were black, their use of poppets was construed as a sign of otherness. When the slaves used poppets, they further distanced themselves from their white masters and their norms. Though poppets were a standard to prove an individual's guilt, none of these accused witches were convicted. Though two slaves presented poppets and variation of them, the two of them confessed to being familiar with witchcraft. None were hanged. The fact, so they might have kept them around for as references, like, yo, tell us who else around here doing that shit. Like, know what I mean? Like, they already know, like, but like, we're gonna let you live if you tell us, well, all these white people out here doing this shit. Wow. The fact that none of the slaves were hanged demonstrated a difference in their treatment by the court and the court's treatment of other accused witches. Mary Black was cleared by proclamation in January 11, 1693, while TITUBA received ignoramus May 9th, 1693, and Candy was found not guilty on 2 counts in January 6, 1693. Furthermore, the judges might have thought that these slaves were already tainted by their skin color in addition to their association with the devil. So that made it seem as though punishment was unnecessary. Well, damn, that saved my whole thing up right there. Damn, so they left them alone saying like, well, shit, they already jacked up. Shit, you already see they black. Damn. well, something worked out for them though, at least. But or perhaps the jury thought it unnecessary to persecute the witches because of their race. Any punishments inflicted on the slaves would also harm. That's true too. If you kill the slave, that the master losing the money. He paid good money for the slave. So if you beat the slave to death or something like that, that's doing nobody any good. So now, like, you know what I mean, you lost money and you ain't gonna getting the things that you used to getting every day, the services that you're getting from them every day. Because all three confessed showed some level of familiarity with black magic and talked about the devil's book. They all met the standards of guilt that developed throughout the trials. Accusing slaves was comparatively easier than accusing townspeople. Because unlike their white counterparts, slaves had no family to defend them, nor did they have any legal rights. Sometimes family members and friends would come to the defense of an accused loved one. However, this was not a possibility for slaves because they were completely disconnected from their family. Even though TITUBA was married to John Indian, the reasons behind this marriage are unclear. Some suppose that they were forced to marry by Samuel Parris, thus giving TITUBA a family, but one that would later testify against her. Samuel Parris also refused to pay for Tuba's jail fees, and therefore she was sold to another master to pay her bonds, effectively removing any idea of family she had with her master. TITUBA's sale removed her as a threat to Salem and also removed her from any sort of slave community with which she might have been involved. The community of slaves within New England and Salem in particular was extremely small, therefore even further minimizing any connection a slave would have to others. Not only did their lack of family contribute to their vulnerability, but also so did the fact that the slaves had no legal standing within the community and could not file any lawsuits for slander on their own. Wow. Not only were slaves vulnerable to accusations because of their lack of community ties, but they were also handicapped by their lack of character witnesses in court. The marginalization of slaves in society was demonstrated by the lack of people who spoke against them in court. For instance, Mary Black was cleared by proclamation in 1693 because nobody appeared against her. Slaves were so insignificant that even if they presented a threat to society, it was considered too meager to garner any substantial response. God dang. Damn. So nobody didn't even care. So nobody, like, they couldn't do nothing when nobody was showing up. They didn't even care, like, what they did. Oh, wow. In addition, the slaves were supposed to be invisible to society, and therefore people did not see them often enough to be able to build a case against them. Before she was accused of witchcraft, TITUBA went unnoticed in Salem. Elaine Bradshaw stated she was already enslaved, had no local tribal connection, was subject to the supervision of an Englishman, and equally as important was a woman. In other words, TITUBA seemed too marginal to be considered a threat to the villagers. Because of her relative anatomy, it is surprising that any slaves were accused at all. And eventually, it seems that the court discovered that they were not worth prosecuting since none of them were actually executed. Although there were only 3 slaves accused during the Salem witchcraft trial, their court records served as an example of the racist attitudes that permitted Puritan lifestyle. The way the accused slaves spoke English, and the way they were dressed constantly demonstrated their low social status and non-existent legal status. Because of their marginal lifestyle, slaves were both ideal people to accuse and the least ideal. Because of the nature of their position in society, slaves had no family to defend them. Yet, because they were so invisible, sometimes had no one to come forward against them. Slaves constantly played with being invincible and being at the forefront of the persecution, as the case of TITUBA. Mary Black, Candy, and TITUBA mixed into their daily lives, mythology, and religion from their previous homes. And therefore, the things that Puritans identified as witchcraft were not necessarily perceived as witchcraft by the slaves. Because of this conflation of the definition of witchcraft and misunderstanding of English, these 3 slaves were easier targets than others. The way slaves were treated outside of the court thusly affected the way they acted and were treated and perceived in court. Wow. And that's interesting too at the end when they talked about how they in their lifestyle wasn't considered witchcraft, but it was considered witchcraft to the Puritans. So one of them I think it was it TITUBA? Um, the things that she did weren't things that were meant to be evil or harm people. It was meant to heal or just to, you know what I'm saying? Like what they would call white magic. You know what I'm saying? So that to them, it wasn't anything evil about it. Like she knew about the evil stuff, but what she did wasn't considered evil or for the devil, as you could say. You know what I'm saying? That's whew, that's heavy. Yeah, that was no joke right there. I like that. Yeah, I like that one right there. Wow. All right, I got this other one, this last one here. I'm just gonna skim through this and drop this bad boy on y'all. This is called Coming to Terms with the Salem Witch Trials by John Murray. All right, give y'all this one here. All right. I see how it is. All right. Last PDF. Chop this one. Check. Mm-hmm. All right, there you go. Last one there. I'm just gonna skim through it and I'm gonna close it on up. There's something I was interested in here that I wanted to show. Salem witch trials have generally confirmed the negative stereotype about Puritans that remain deeply embedded in American popular culture. As recently as Arthur Miller's The Crucible, the trials have represented an attempt by bigoted clergymen and magistrates to increase their power at the expense of ordinary people who became their victims. To most Americans, the trials also reflected the inherently cruel nature of Puritanism itself. When asked what happened at Salem, most people today will respond that a lot of innocent people were burned at the stake. New York and the southern colonies burned quite a few people at the stake, always slaves. But I have been encountered only two such incidents in the colonial New England. Maria, an African, burned alive for arson in 1681, and Phyllis, burned at the stake in 1755 for petite treason, that is, poisoning her master. Damn. Under their Puritan regimes, the New England colonies sharply limited the number of capital offenses, mostly by insisting upon a biblical mandate for any executions. In practice, juries restricted capital crimes even further by demanding, in effect, that an offense be capital under both biblical and English common law before they would impose the death penalty. Murder and witchcraft both qualified under this informal rule, but many other offenses did not. For example, there are 3 early executions for adultery, which the Bible defined as capital, but common law did not. Juries refused to convict anyone for such offense, but instead voted the accused guilty of a lesser crime, such as lewd and lascivious behavior tending to adultery. In like manner, the Puritan colonies did not include crimes against property on their list of capital offenses because only the common law, not the Bible, authorized execution for these offenses. The Salem witch panic stands out in part because the judicial execution of 20 people within 3 months became an event of enormous drama in a region that hanged comparatively few offenders and in a colony that had hanged only 5 people for witchcraft before 1692, and only one of those after 1656. On the world stage, the trial stood out because they came near the end of the early modern European witch hunt that had started around 1550 and continued for a century and a half, although the pace slowed considerably after about 1660. In a word, even within the history of New England witch trials, the Salem Panic became a unique event in the scale of the trials and was almost unique in the way that they had developed. To see how and why, we need to look at the regional pattern of witch trials before 1692. As New England historians have been pointing out for more than a century, the settlers brought their folk beliefs and their religious convictions with them to America. Fear of witchcraft was part of both their folklore and their high theology. This point cannot be contested that yet, although the settlers and their colonies brought similar beliefs with them, nobody was executed for witchcraft outside of New England except for one woman in Maryland in 1685 and 5 people in the tiny island colony of Bermuda. There between 1651 and 1655, 4 women and 1 man were hanged. The court accepted the testimony of black witnesses against white defendants. Wow. And even hanged a white woman for bewitching a mulatto. Woo! In 1671, another woman was convicted and sentenced to death by the governor or proprietor. Altogether, 23 people were accused in Bermuda between 1651 and 1696. Within New England, executions occurred only in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Haven, not in Plymouth, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, or Maine. The combination of a learned clergy, actually out here, there are a lot of witch hangings and stuff. There's quite a few of them. There's a famous one out here too called Goody Bassett too. Wow. And I noticed too, a lot of these accused witches are buried in unknown spots. A lot of them are buried in unknown spots. So where they weren't buried in graveyards. They were buried in like this weird unknown spots. But the one about Goody Bassett is kind of deep. I might do a whole nother show on Goody Bassett. I might do that tomorrow too. Accusations arose outside New England, but even when a case went to trial involving a Virginia woman, it did not lead to a fatal result. In the Protestant Netherlands, magistrates stopped cooperating in witch accusations after 1590, and the trial soon ended, just as they were beginning to peak throughout the rest of the Western Europe. Most early New England trials, adult men brought accusations against post-menopausal women. in every case within this, nearly every case within this pattern, the complaint involved male fictive. How do you say that? How do you say that? Wow. Yeah. Come on. You say that. Malficium. Some evil deed that the victim attributed to the accused. A dead cow or pig. A child who suddenly took ill or something of that kind. In New England, as in Western Europe, witchcraft was overwhelmingly a female crime. Women accounted for more than 80% of the accused. Even many of the men who fell under suspicion were secondary targets who happened to be closely related to the primary suspect, a woman. Right, some old cranky women and stuff running their mouth. The men got tired of that. Like, you's a damn witch. You ain't got no off switch, woman. It's all your fault. We do got a demon on you. We do not know much about these early trials, but between 1647 and 1650, yo, that's the killer years, yo. That 1650 to 1670, those are the killer years, man. See, those were hard times. 10 women and 1 man were executed by where no executions for 27 years after the founding of Plymouth, or 17 years after the founding of Boston. Plymouth never showed much interest in witchcraft. Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Haven probably had few women past childbearing years prior to the mid 1640s. Hunt pursued by Matthew Hopkins. That's old Killer B, the English witch finder general. Oh snap! It's English witch finder general Matthew Hopkins, witch finder general. That began in 1645. May well have triggered anxieties about witches on the other side of the Atlantic. Although about 60 people were accused in New England between 1647 and 1663. Of the first 12 to be tried, 8 were executed, most of them in Connecticut, which remained the center of New England witch trials into 1660s. Right. So anybody wondering too why I call myself the witch finder general? It's not because like I'm trying to kill witches or burn witches. Or you know, I say I'll got a witch, I'll burn a you know what up. I'm trying to keep it clean for this video. But it's because the cult that I used to be in, the Black Hebrew Israelites cult that I was in. So since I left the cult, I dedicated myself to burning up all the witches of the Black Hebrew Israelite cults and other cults that's plaguing people and manipulating and destroying people's lives. So I look at a witch as someone that's trying to harm people for their own little, like, wicked little thingamajiggy, if you want to call it. So the cult leaders are witches to me because they manipulate the people, they lie to the people, and they destroy their lives for their gain. You know what I mean? So that's what I call the witch. Not anybody that practice or like the cult or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? So maybe like voodoo or Palo or whatever type of religion and stuff. I don't care what religion. Like if you want to follow the Bible, follow the Bible. Follow the Torah, follow the Torah. You want to follow the Bible, the Gita, follow the Bible, the Gita. You want to follow whatever you want to follow, as long as it makes you a better person and stuff. I'm cool with it. But once you take it and be trying to say I'm it, we are the ones, and everybody got to die and all types of stuff like that. That's when I come through and stuff with the torches and burn you up. So enough with that. And let's see something else in here. Let me see. Oh, let's see something here. Check that out. I think that's going to be about it for the night. I know I'm afraid to look at the time. We really are. All right, that's about it. Let's find the general. Does it again. So one more time. All right, that's it. All right, that'll be it. I put that link in there for y'all already. Oh, what up? What up, Malak? I ain't see you there. How long you been up in here? I just got here. But this is a good show tonight. I'm gonna edit that one little blank spot I got up in there and stuff. This is really good. This is a really good show. Make sure you check out those PDF files that I put in there. Some really good stuff in there. So basically what I spoke about tonight was these 3 black slaves. Well, one of them is supposedly could have been African, could have been a Native American, could have been Native American African, like a Native, well, Indian and African mixed slave or whatever. These three slaves that I spoke about tonight, and how with the witch trials, they're one of the first people and stuff that were put on trial. And it was interesting because I didn't know, like, because some of the stuff I don't even review before I even hit that button to go live with you guys. So that's what I did tonight. I just skimmed through it. And as I read it to you guys tonight, like, it was real interesting how these slaves, like, and the author made it out, like, towards the end of it, like, how these slaves were pretty much kind of getting back at their oppressor, at their masters, for whatever reasons and stuff like that. And the people didn't really pay any attention to them like that. So, like, they weren't executed. But, like, the majority of the ones executed were white. You know what I mean? But the slaves, they were so insignificant, like, the people didn't care, like, anything about them. Like, nobody even bothered to accuse them or, like, come and, like, you know what I mean, give a testimony on them or say anything. So, like, you know what I mean? They would stick it to their masters and be like, well, my master told me to do this. They'll do stuff like that, yo. It's pretty deep. So I got the video. I'm not going to spoil it for you. You can go back and watch it. It's interesting. Cool. I was going to go to bed, but I'm glad I stayed up and did this. Got this over with. So, yeah, that's about it. I'm going to head on out of here. No, they ain't one person up here. If you want to come in here, say a couple words or something. If not, I'm going to see something on Facebook real quick. Wake up in there. You gotta jump in when we say anything. I know I'm afraid to look at this time. Probably like 5 o'clock in the morning. Almost 4:39. Damn. All right. Thank you, Keisha Harrison. Thank you, Chavius Herman. Thank you for sharing my post. That's awesome. That really means a lot. Wow, that's cool. Thank you so much for that. That's cool. Hook me up. That's what's up. So, I got you. I'm definitely gonna put those links. I hope I didn't close the darn thing. Did I? I want to see the thing where they were talking about that damn cake that I'm gonna get up out of here. That witch cake. They said what the cake was made out of. I don't know where I got that from. Oh, I'll read this. All right, I'll leave. What's the thing about the cake, yo? It said something. I don't see it. I had it on the board. I don't know where it went. Talking about that cake. Well, obviously it's gone. But it said the cake was made out of it. It was like made something in urine or something. And it's supposed to attract. It's supposed to bring the witches to that place. Like if you make this cake and you set it out, the witch is gonna come. They can come knock on the door or do whatever. I should have read this too. Witchcraft. It seems good. How big that cake is. I'll do another video on that. That looks dope. Let's see here. What else? Uh, I'm confused now. I guess I'm just tired and need to go sit down somewhere. Oh yeah, this is what it was. Um, Three enslaved women were approximately 155 people accused of witchcraft. Let me share this. I read this and I'm out. Promise. Get the hell out. Black witches are sick. Black witches are sick. Three enslaved women were among approximately 155 accused of witchcraft in the infamous Salem witch trials in 1692. Two of the enslaved women were identified in court records as black. The third, a legendary TITUBA, was classified as Indian. The race of TITUBA has been disputed over 150 years. Since 1692, TITUBA's ethnicity has evolved from Indian to half American. No, I'm sorry, Indian to half African to half Indian. Wait. From Indian to half African and half Indian into a fully enslaved African woman. The two women accused of witchcraft, who unlike TITUBA were actually black, were both female servants in Puritan households. Candy and Mary Black. Candy, originally from Barbados, resided in Salem town with her enslavtress, Margaret Hawks. When questioned, Candy revealed to the court that it was her, white enslaveress, Margaret, who had made her a witch and taught her the craft. After being asked if her enslaveress made her into a witch, Candy replied, yes. In this country, Margaret gave Candy witch. Candy then went on to detail how Margaret made her into a witch by bringing up the devil's book and had her made her a mark in it. In her description, Candy stated, she bring book, pen, and ink. Make Candy write in it. Further drawing a comparison between her enslaveress and the devil. When asked if she was a witch, Candy replied, Candy no witch in this country. Candy mother no witch. Candy no witch. Barbados. The curious magistrates asked Candy to produce the puppets that she claimed she used to torment people. Accompanied by a court-appointed deputy, she was escorted home and returned with rags of cloth, a piece of cheese, some grass, and a handkerchief tied with several knots. Deciding to experiment with Candy's tools of trade, the magistrates burned one of the rags, and allegedly a burn appeared on the hand of one of the afflicted girls. Two more choked as if drowning when another rag was placed underwater. Two indictments were handed down against Candy, and she was jailed. Later, she was found guilty and released. Mary Black's enslaver was Nathan Putnam of Salem Village. Mary was accused of witchcraft on April 21st, 1692. Putnam was a respected leader and a member of the Salem Village, whose younger nephews and cousins were avid witchcraft accusers. Her examination was requested by the Reverend Samuel Parris. At other examinations held on April 22nd, she was accused by several of the afflicted girls. Though she was pressed to admit that she was a witch, she steadfastly refused, stating, I hurt nobody. Who doth? I do not know. She was indicted and imprisoned, but not tried. She was cleared by proclamation in January 11, 1693. And the slaver Nathan Putnam paid her jail fees and took her back into the house. Wait a second. Oh, that was for Mary Black. Okay, I was like, wait a minute, that didn't happen. Okay, all right, I'm up out of here, yo. Killer B, the doggone witch kind of general. You got a witch, I'll burn them up. Thank y'all tuning in. And that's gonna be about it. I'm not gonna go out of here with a song. Why not go out of here with a song from Josh? What song I'm gonna play now? You missed me again, Sister P. I didn't want to text you this late. I didn't want to text you this late. I went on 3 o'clock. I didn't want to text you this late. But you get out of here with dedicate this video to the homegirl Pete. Play that Stone. It was called Stone or something like that. Play that song. Real ass rap type song. Yeah, Stone. That's top. I think it was Stone. You can find out. All right, y'all. Killer B, the Witchfinder General. You got a witch. I'll burn him up. Hope y'all have fun hanging with me. See somebody pop up in here lately. Don't worry, you got two cool PDFs for you to read. From your boy Killer B. They're in the chat.
Set the stage. Gunplay.
After us in the chat doesn't load up. Play the video.
Ocean spray, drink it up. Corrupt cops, modulator difficulties with neighbors, traders on the moon and on your face. Lace stockings, boots and clothes, show hoes. I hate those. Stay froze. No coke and no overdose. Stay on the post, heavenly host. Into the jungle, more than Guns N' Roses. Welcome to the black denials of the Denali's. Probably not what's costly. Rockin' Marley, dropping Barbie, retarded arenas, gassed up like Nina, 5 fingers still in white. Give me insight like original man. Growing up was the plan, now older, 11 cities on the sand. Open hand like Chance, never kept up with the Joneses. Violence on the news, holiday bonus, homeless, don't owe us. Who paid for the postage? Yahweh is one. Yahweh is one. Yad Sharala Allah. One is Yahweh Allahayam. Lahayam Bishop. Ahayam Yahweh. God. Make believe. God's die horrible deaths. I know why the remnant was left right. Sinking to the depths. Sight. The flats with stupidity. Till holy earth remain completely dropped to run on for the walkers of the day tonight. Time talkers. The wad altars are marked for starters. The largest mass graves in existence. Ate a little, spit a little. Ate a little, spit a little. Ate a little, spit a lot like Gomorrah. Above the cloud Sora, on sorcerers. Panic at the borders, enormous. The rhyme style by her wisdom. Dormant's gone fishing, poured the white grapes and drank the honey. Mummy living looks sunny. Brothers Playboy funny, Esau hunting. Looks like a job for somebody, something somewhere here. Told y'all folks time and space clear. Flat earth, round earth, you're all between alphabet. Street camp, die on the sea, burn up Vatican with ease. Then rest and watch Adama from the trees. Hey. Then rest, watch Adama from the trees. Believe, like eight. So wings and beliefs. Collapse Eiffel on BBC because blacks with BBC on attack on all of me. An army captain brings what he brings. He what brings captain, army, and me of all on attacking sea. BBs with blacks because CBB on iron collapse believes and swings egg like believe trees. Look from Adama, watch and rest in. Ease when Vatican up burn. Seen the on die camp. Greek alphabet between in all earth round. Earth flat, clear space, time, both y'all. Yah told y'all. Yahweh is one. Tom, Yah's Allah, La, one, is Yahweh, Allah, Hayam, Lahayam, Bashar, Ahayam, Yahweh, the Yah. Host is the for pay who us owe, don't homeless, bonus holiday, views on the violence, Joneses, an army captain breathes on what he brings, captivated audience on the nut swing. An army captain breathes on what he brings. Captivated audience on the nuts swing. Slice. Sickle. Torch. The wad.
This is my favorite part.
earth.
Slice
King,
up, man. Thought you knew.
bring him the wealth.
You knew what was coming.
Bring him the wealth. You own the wealth. Yahweh above all else.
Be quiet.
But you know,
Be quiet.
wait, what is that?
Be still.
Hello?
Be still.
Wait.
Be still.
Where's that coming from?
Be
Hello?
still. Yahweh.
Hello in there.
Yahweh.
Oh. In the beginning, Alahayas created the heaven and the earth.
Listen.
All right, y'all. Killer B, what's right in general? You got what y'all burn them up. Peace.